Hey, guess what? We made it from Portland, Oregon to Cape Cod, Massachusetts in a 2-week long road trip. But even more than that, I'm really pleased to tell you that we are still COVID-free, according to our required tests. But we did have a few adventures on our route, some smoky forest fires, a surprising mountain snowstorm in September, and we discovered a completely unexpected place that we're probably going to come back and stay for a full season, right in the middle of the United States. So I'm going to dive in to all of our stories for course update number 24, which actually marks almost exactly the 2-year anniversary of becoming a digital nomad family. So by this point in time, we've gotten pretty good at the packing up process, and we hit the road for our first leg through Oregon, past Mount Hood, and heading into Bend, Oregon. And it was on that section of the road that we encountered our first rather unexpected adventure. I looked up at the clouds thinking they looked kind of funny. And then I kind of followed them along the horizon and realized that's smoke, not clouds. We were, in fact, passing one of the major forest fires that would soon become national, even international news. So as it turns out, we got out of Portland just in time. Our first couple nights in Hines, Oregon, and then in Aberdeen, Idaho were, pretty uneventful. But day 3, we started our drive into Yellowstone. Now, this is going to be our second visit this year, which was unbelievable all by itself. And since we were coming from the southwestern side of the park, but we were staying on the northeastern side of the park, we figured we'd just go in through the park and drive up through the South Gate, through the Grand Tetons, and drive through the park to get to our destination. Why not enjoy it, right? So the real goal from my perspective was I really wanted to see the Beartooth Mountain Pass, which we had missed on our previous trip back in June and which I've heard is truly stunning. So why not drive through the park and go through that pass to get to our cabin, which was in Red Lodge, Montana. So we drove up. We actually had lunch again in Jackson, Wyoming, drove into the Tetons, and that was when things started getting interesting. The clouds were gathering, and we made it into the park. We started driving north, and then the rain that was spitting started turning into snow. And the snow got heavier. Now understand, just the previous day, literally the day before, it was 95 degrees in Aberdeen, Idaho. And here we were one day later in Yellowstone, and it was snowing. So suffice it to say, we weren't really prepared for this. Now, the snow started getting heavier, and we realized that the idea of going through the Beartooth Mountain Pass in these conditions was probably not a great plan. So we changed plans. We turned around, we went back south again, and decided to go out via the eastern entrance towards Cody, Wyoming. Well, that pass is also a mountain pass. It's called Sylvan Pass. So yeah, we ended up spending roughly 3+ hours driving through the snow over Sylvan Pass and around through Cody and then north to Red Lodge. And honestly, the last 15 minutes was truly whiteout conditions. So really wasn't expecting this in September. This is early September too, like the 8th. So we arrived. We struggled a bit to find the right cabin in the snow. There were quite literally tree branches that were cracking and falling all around our car because it was a wet, heavy snow and all the trees still had the leaves on them. So it kind of was a little bit harrowing almost, but we did manage to find a safe place to park the car, got everything inside, and discovered there was no heat. Here we are. It's like 9:30 at night. We've been driving for 3 or 4 hours in the snow through the mountains, and now we have a place to stay, but the place doesn't have any heat. So this was truly like the crazy adventure of the trip. I called the hosts, blessedly, they had a far more snow-worthy car than our little Mazda, and 2 hours later, they showed up with space heaters and the knowledge to figure out how to relight the pilot lights on the propane heaters at the cabin. So that was a big adventure that we really didn't anticipate. Now, the next day, because of the snow, Beartooth Mountain Pass was still closed. So our only options to get back into Yellowstone were either to drive back down to the eastern entrance that we had used the previous day, or around to the north entrance. And since the snow had stopped and the weather was looking much nicer, we decided to go back to the eastern entrance and get to enjoy that route in some better weather, and I'm really glad that we did. We went through Buffalo Bill State Park, Shoshone National Forest, the mountains, the cliffs, all of it was truly stunning. We kept saying that as we were driving through in the snow. I think this would be beautiful in different weather. Guess what? We were right. The next day, in different weather, it really was beautiful. It was stunning, in fact. We made it into the park, and, it's Yellowstone. We got to enjoy the buffalo and the elk. We even stopped when there was a big squadron of cars. We couldn't see what the heck they were looking at, so I got out and walked over, and guess what? Mama and baby bear. It was so cute. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you. So that was amazing. We also made it back to Old Faithful, which was a major thing for our pumpkin because she has been talking nonstop about geysers ever since we saw Old Faithful in June. She's been watching videos, learning about magma and reservoirs, and when you're 3 and talking about these things, you just kind of get astonished. But she enjoyed it just as much. She was every bit as excited, and I'm really glad we got to do that with her one more time. So then we drove back north through the park. Unfortunately, Beartooth Mountain Pass remained closed the whole day. So we went north, exited through Gardner, and drove home. So, gonna have to go back and see that amazing pass some other time. Now, the next day we drove to Aladdin, Wyoming, which I just thought was a fun name. And we actually stayed at a farm stay cabin on a literal farm. And I think one of my favorite parts was when we pulled up, we had the kitten welcoming committee, which was so super cute. There were like 4 little tiny kittens and a mama cat who all raced over, and all they wanted to do was curl up and cuddle and be petted, which, who doesn't love that? I suppose if you're allergic, maybe, but as far as I was concerned, and certainly as far as our 3-year-old was concerned, this was a massive win. There were also deer, mamas and babies, turkeys and horses, and a whole bunch of other animals, so that was really an extra bonus treat. It was the next day that was actually a really unexpected, very positive surprise. Now, we were planning our route through South Dakota, so we figured, you go to Rushmore if you're going through South Dakota, why not? But the night before, while sitting in that little farm cabin, I happened across the Gypsy Tour app of the Black Hills, Rushmore, and the Badlands. Now, the Gypsy Tour app is the same one we used in Yellowstone that we really enjoyed. And essentially, this tour was taking us right along our planned route with just a few scenic detours. So, talking it over together, we said, why the heck not? And I have to say, that was one of the best decisions, spontaneously, that we could have made. So we took the route that the tour recommended. We went through Spearfish Canyon and the Black Hills, took the road through Lead, South Dakota, and the very famous Deadwood, South Dakota, which was quite the tourist town, and were it not for COVID and our need to keep moving towards our next stop, we probably would have played there for quite a while. And then we drove the Needles Highway through Custer State Park, which had a whole lot of twisty roads and 1-lane tunnels through the rocks, and a bunch of picturesque views of Rushmore, many of which didn't show up quite as well on our video, but were super cool in person. Now, we did make the decision, knowing that everyone from everywhere in this part of the world was likely headed for Rushmore. We decided to skip it due to COVID, and instead keep going on to the Badlands. So we got, a distant view, but we chose not to actually stop and go and see them from up close. And instead, keep on this really awesome driving tour through Rapid City, South Dakota, and on to the Badlands. By the time we made it to Rapid City, we were both talking and looking at each other and kind of astonished to say that we were pretty sure we'll be coming back. That I never would have expected to spend, a summer or, 3-4 months in South Dakota, but it is now on our list for the future to spend an extended period here, because it was really just that cool. We made it to the Badlands just before sunset, and the light on the rocks was magical. And the audio tour gave some great historical context about the area that really just kind of put a topper on the day and gave us this wonderful end experience to what was truly a surprisingly delightful day. The next few days, we continued our drive through South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and honestly, they were about like we expected. Flat, farmlands, a couple of days of actually some rainy weather too, which rain when there's not much to see wasn't so bad. And then we headed into Chicago. Blessedly, the rain stopped and gave us one really stunning day in town. So we decided to take a walk along the Lakefront Trail, which gave us some wonderful views of Lake Michigan and of downtown Chicago. We found a place that we could have lunch outside at Cafecita, and then we walked back along the lake again. Now, let me acknowledge, boy, were we tired by the end of that day. That was 5 miles of walking after a week solid in a car. So, yeah, my knees were pretty shot after the end of that day. So the next couple of days, back into the car, on through Ohio, Pennsylvania, and into Buffalo, New York. Now, another really kind of delightful surprise, and here we stayed on an urban farm, right in the middle of Buffalo. It was this small apartment with a great view overlooking a community farm garden. And we ended up spending then the next day, a whole afternoon, walking around Niagara State Park. I had been to Niagara a couple of times. Brian thinks he may have been there once when he was a really little kid, but not since. And of course, our pumpkin had never been there before, so we had a wonderful time enjoying the views of the falls from the American side. Of course, the Canada border is still closed, but that was still super cool. It was actually really impressive, and the rainbow over the waterfall made it even more magical and spectacular. Bonus for me that day was that evening we had one of the best dinners that I've had in months on the patio in the garden at the Dapper Goose. Yes, I am a real sucker for a good cheese plate and a glass of wine. So that just topped the day for me and made it, oh my God, so much better. The next day we drove across New York and into Western Massachusetts. And finally, we were really in some familiar territory. We have a lot of friends out in Western Mass. And while COVID prevented us from getting to see most of them, it was nice to be in a place that we, were familiar with. We just knew it reasonably well. So we spent the afternoon and we walked around the Botanic Garden at Smith College on our final rest day of the trip. I did take the opportunity to have a masked, socially distanced backyard chat with my little sister. She and I adopted each other years ago. She's the daughter of dear friends. I get to see where her new home in Greenfield, Massachusetts was. But since we hadn't yet gotten the results of our COVID tests, we pretty much stayed away from everybody, and I didn't even go into her new home to take a tour. We'll save that for another day. Our final day, we finally got to drive to Cape Cod and land in our new home, which has a huge yard and 3 bedrooms. And to be quite honest, this place feels positively palatial compared to the tiny little nook we were in Portland. So we are very happy to be spending the next couple of months here on the Cape, and I will give you the whole scoop about life here in next month's course update. In the meantime, if you're curious about how we make this lifestyle affordable, living full-time in Airbnbs, while on average saving around 49% off the nightly published rates for our extended stays, I have created a free video training that you can get at chosencourse.com/Airbnb. Maybe it'll help you save a bunch of money off of your next location-independent adventure, whether you're exploring the whole world or just your corner of it. Happy travels, Freedom Lover. Catch you next time.